lot's been said recently about MDMA-assisted therapy, anticipation that the FDA will approve this by Q2 of next year. So based off of what you shared, when we look at this research pertaining to MDMA, where does the future of this product lie, you think? Hey everyone, welcome to our latest TDR Psychedelic Exclusive. Thanks for checking in. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Phase 3, as we know, it's big when it comes to this industry, and we want to bring a familiar face back to the podcast who is about to embark on a Phase 3, Anthony Tennyson. He is the CEO of Awakn Life Sciences. It's been a few months. Good to see you
It
back.
has indeed.
Good to see you back. How are things?
Yeah, things are really good, Chad. It's really good to see you. Good to speak to your audience again. It's been a couple of months, but we've been hard at work preparing for the Phase 3 that we're going to run in the UK, and completing some other work in order to just improve the focus and the fitness of the company.
That's exciting. Weathering the storm, I would say, with this industry over the past 18 months, has it not?
Yes, it has. In fact, I used to do a fair bit of ocean sailing when I had more hair on the top of my head, and it's been a bit like some of the storms I've been caught in doing some offshore races. I will say.
So the ocean has your hair. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
I'm probably close to that, buddy. As much as it looks like I've got some thick full of hair here, when I got the old comb over, she's getting pretty thin. But listen. There's been a lot of companies that went public in the early days. Those that are sticking around are proving to be actual players within the actual industry itself. We get a lot of feedback from our viewers about an update. Can you interview Anthony Tennyson? This is a company, Awakn Life Sciences, that's about to embark on a Phase 3. I think a lot of people where it's not getting enough attention. So first things first, because as I said, it's probably been 6 months since we last spoke. Give us an update on what things have been progressing, because I know there's been a few tweaks as far as the overall business strategy.
Yeah, happy to. So to refresh everyone's mind, we're Awakn Life Sciences. We're a clinical stage biotechnology company developing therapeutics to treat addiction. And we have a near-term focus on alcohol use disorder, which is a condition, unfortunately, that affects 285 million people globally. But very importantly, it affects 40 million people in the US and the five big European economies. We set the company up originally, Shad, back in 2020. And when we looked, and the purpose was to provide hope for individuals, families, and communities suffering with addiction. And when you look at the US market, which is the biggest market for addiction, there's a disproportionate amount of value or cost created in the drug, in the healthcare services side of the addiction treatment industry. Only about 4% of costs in the addiction industry in the US come from medication, and 96% of costs come from healthcare services. If you look at other chronic diseases in the US, it's about a 75-25% split.
That's interesting.
75% from healthcare, 25% from drug. And so we said, listen, we need to understand the healthcare services business in addition to the biotech R&D business. So we set the company up with a dual strategy of biotech R&D and healthcare services and clinics, so that we can understand how these drugs should be developed and delivered, so that we have the highest probability of success, highest probability of developing something on the R&D side that will be tractable, will gain traction, and will be accepted by the existing addiction treatment industry. Because it's a really large industry in the US, but it's highly underperforming. There's 14,000 clinics in the US treating people for substance use disorders. And there's an opportunity for them to be significantly better at what they do.
Here's a stat that I learned actually a couple of weeks ago. The US government spends around $820 billion per year towards substance use disorder, and it's not working. That's a staggering stat, to say the least, right?
It's a very big, very intractable problem, and the current treatments that are available aren't as effective for all people as they could be. You've got medication-assisted therapy, it's primarily repurposing naltrexone, and then you've got talk-based therapy, and they aren't effective. With alcohol use disorder, there's a 75% relapse rate, at least a 75% relapse rate within the first 12 months. Post-treatment. So we set the company up with that dual focus of R&D and clinics, so that we could understand the healthcare services side of the business, so that we could walk the walk, talk the talk, and develop drugs and therapeutics that would be relevant and acceptable to the existing very large but underperforming addiction treatment industry, particularly in the US.
Yeah.
We've now learned everything that we can learn and that we wanted to learn from healthcare services. Also, you look at the fact that the cost of capital, or the availability of capital, is limited and the cost of capital is high. So we've decided to exit the healthcare services side of our business. We've exited the clinics we had in the UK, and we're conducting a strategic review of the clinics we have in Norway. And that's enabling us to significantly reduce burn, Chad, extend the runway when we raise more money, and enabling us to just have a laser focus on the development of therapeutics, drug and psychosocial support used in combination to treat addiction, starting with alcohol use disorder and then moving on into other addictions in due course. So we've got 3 core R&D programs. Program 1, AWKN P001, where we've in-licensed a completed phase 2B program from a university in the UK. It's about repurposing ketamine to be used in combination with therapy to treat severe alcohol use disorder. That phase 2 delivered stellar results. People coming onto that trial were sober 2% of the time. That means they were abstinent 7 days a year. Think of the impact that has on their body, their systems, their families, their communities.
Of course.
The people in the active arm of that trial, we got them up to being abstinent on average 86% of the time in the 6 months post-treatment.
Wow.
And that's 3.5 times better than the current standard of care.
Yeah.
So we're bringing that trial forward into phase 3. So there'll be Compass in phase 3 for psilocybin, MAPS completed phase 3 for MDMA, and Awakn in phase 3 for ketamine. Difference for us, though, is we've partnered with the UK state. That's brought the cost of the trial down. Total cost for that trial is 2.25 million sterling, or about 2.5 US. And the UK state are actually contributing more of the cost to it. So our costs for an N equals 280, potentially pivotal trial,
which is huge,
is 1 million US.
If you didn't have a sponsorship, give people an idea as to what a phase 3 trial for something like this would cost normally.
Somewhere between 50 and 100 million.
Wow. Think about that.
Yeah. Now it can be less. You can reduce the N numbers, but somewhere between 50 and 100 million. And we've got it for 1 million for a condition that affects many millions of people globally, and for which we've developed something and proven efficacy in the phase 2. It's 3.5 times better than the current standard of care. So that's our lead program.
Yeah.
Targeting the US for commercialization on label 2026, 2027.
If this doesn't give you, go ahead, finish.
Our second program is we're working with the European Pharma company to repurpose S-ketamine into an oral thin film for sublingual delivery.
Okay.
And the reason we're doing that is we believe sublingual is the route of administration that has the highest probability of being acceptable. And again, everything we're doing is about developing things that will have traction and will be applicable in the healthcare business. We believe that's a route of administration that will have traction for mild and moderate alcohol use disorder, whereas IV racemic for severe alcohol use disorder.
Okay.
And then our third program is we're working with Catalent, one of the world's leading drug dev, manufacturing and distribution companies, to repurpose, or we're going to develop MDMA into an oral tablet to get the API in through the sublingual route and get the API into the bloodstream in about 2.5 seconds and get to peak in a significantly shorter time than MDMA through the traditional oral tablet going through the digestive system. And we believe we can shorten the window for MDMA-assisted psychotherapy. And again, this is about developing things that will be easier to plug into the existing healthcare infrastructure. So ketamine's great, 90 minutes in the experience, 90 minutes relaxation or recovery, and then people can be released. So that is higher probability of being easy to integrate into the existing addiction treatment industry infrastructure in the US. We use manualized psychotherapy or psychosocial support so that it's easier to train Therefore, there's a lower opportunity cost. Therefore, again, higher probability of being able to be delivered at an appropriate margin within the existing healthcare infrastructure. And then we're working with on MDMA to reduce that down to something that will enable people to have 2 patients per room, patient cycles per room per day. Again, it's all about making sure that this can be delivered within existing healthcare infrastructure at an acceptable margin, at low opportunity cost for existing healthcare infrastructure.
How is the relationship built with, as you said, Catalent Pharma? They're a pretty big company, to say the least, pertaining to your MDMA research.
The relationship was established when we identified sublingual as a route of administration for ketamine for our mild and moderate alcohol use disorder program. We identified Catalent as having completed a phase 1 for racemic ketamine, but turned out they'd done it with another company. And that began a conversation with them around what else we could potentially work on. And then it was suddenly an aha moment of, hang on, if you can use sublingual to increase or to reduce the onset time, well, then we think there's possibility for us to work together to potentially solve some of the known pharmacokinetic challenges that exist with MDMA. And that's where the relationship started. And, we're a very small company, Catalent a very big company, but they say, look, we've worked with many people. I think it was Biohaven, perhaps, that was bought by Pfizer for about 12 billion very recently. They had a strategic relationship with Catalent.
Interesting.
And when they started working with Catalent, there was, I think, 3 people in the company, and they worked with Catalent all the way up to becoming a bigger company. So Catalent are used to working, and they partner with smaller companies to help them grow.
So good network, to say the least. I bring that up because when we look at this industry as a whole right now, a lot's been said recently about MDMA-assisted therapy, anticipation that the FDA will approve this by Q2 of next year. So based off of what you shared, when we look at this research pertaining to MDMA, where does the future of this product lie, you think?
I think the future of this product lies for generic MDMA getting on label through the stellar results that hopefully will be published in due course around their phase 3, enabling MAPS to get on label for MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD at a federal level in the US at some stage next year. I think when we look at our core competency in addiction, we certainly know that trauma is a contributing factor, if not a causal factor, in many cases of substance use disorder. But when we look at the infrastructure that's available for treating addiction, and there's 14,000 clinics in the US currently treating substance use disorder, and about 80% of those are set up to deliver medication-assisted therapy. But when we look at their infrastructure, I don't believe they're set up for the specialist infrastructure that's going to be required to deliver MDMA-assisted therapy through an oral tablet, where you need quite a high dose because it takes quite a long time to get to peak. And that means there's quite a high load, and that results in there being about 6 to 8 hours in the experience. So what we want to do is, particularly for addiction, which is our core competency, is we want to see if we can reduce that window by reducing the onset period or the onset time, reducing the load, and therefore reducing the time in experience, so that it can be delivered more easily within the existing addiction treatment industry. And that's what we're really focused on. So I think, you're going to have MAPS on label for a couple of years. I think there may be some challenges with really scaling that.
100%. That's a big question right now of the industry. I think legalization is one thing, but then as far as the proper infrastructure, we're going to have
there's a rate limiting factor to adoption and therefore scale and therefore commercial returns. And I've learned that because we ran healthcare clinics. Healthcare business is a tough business. It's a margin business, and it requires intense use of real estate, and it requires throughput of patients, clients, customers, depending on whereabouts in healthcare you are. And real estate is a significant cost. And currently, the way psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy should be delivered in a relatively large room with a bed and with 3 chairs and a table, because you have to have a client and a therapist setting pair, and you have to have a toilet, ensuite toilet, and potentially a shower as well. that requires quite a lot of room. You stack that up against a dental practice or other type of medical practices. They're much more conservative in the use of real estate. And so there's going to be a challenge. You're asking people to rebuild infrastructure or to build new infrastructure. If you think of PTSD, how's that currently treated?
Uh-huh.
Well, you go to your psychiatrist and you're in a consulting room and you're in there for 15 minutes to 30 minutes, and then someone else comes in, and then someone else comes in, and someone else comes in. And that's how those doctors like to run their business. Or you go to your therapist and you talk to them for an hour or maybe 45 minutes, and then they do their notes for 45 minutes, and that's in a single room with a couch, maybe a chair, and a desk. That infrastructure for treating PTSD is not currently tooled up to deliver MDMA assisted therapy. So that's a rate limiting factor to adoption at scale. And what we want to try and do is certainly with addiction, where those clinics, there's more clinics set up, they're used to having people there for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
We want to develop psychedelic assisted psychotherapies that can be deployed in those infrastructures
Gotcha.
with minimum rebuilding and retooling.
Yeah. Interesting stuff, to say at least. What I'm seeing more and more in this industry is one company, say, for example, might be in drug development, but are now focusing on the clinical model, and they're looking to unload some of their, like, cash burning assets. Like you, it's like we want to focus. It's like people are really starting to understand if they're making big strides with their leading research, it's like they're starting to really identify who they are as a company and where they need to obviously put 100% of their focus. And as I continue to have more and more of these conversations, I think the interesting thing is that we've had these conversations before in the past. I really didn't know where this industry was going, even as much as 18 months. But what I've learned along the way with specific companies, I get the feel that you're really starting to see more and more as to how this industry is going to shape up to be, don't you think?
I do. I think there was a bit of an experimentation by companies with their business models, as is always the case
Yeah.
in new and emergent industries. And now people have said, okay, look, this is where I'm good, and this is where I'm going to specialize. And that for us is we we explored healthcare. We've learned what we need to learn from healthcare. We've learned that healthcare is a margin business. And for us to be successful and the industry to be successful, we need to develop things that are easy to deploy within existing healthcare infrastructure. We know that now. That we've now taken that learning and we're applying that to our target product profile on the biotech side.
Yeah.
And we are now laser focused on developing therapeutics, drug, and psychosocial support to be used in combination to treat substance use disorders.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to focus on. And we're going to see more and more companies who are maybe experimenting with their business models. I think most of that experimentation is kind of completed now, and people are finding their swim lane or their specialism, and they're focusing fully on that. And I think then that makes it easier for investors, right? And we need investors in this business because we need these therapeutics on label, and we need them on label so that the public healthcare systems over this side of the water and up in Canada, and that the reimbursement models in the US, that they can support the delivery of these therapeutics. But that takes time and it takes expense,
Takes
and we
time.
need investors capital. We need capital to do that, and it's much easier for investors to go, right, I'm going to place a bet on this company, which is a specialist company focused on addiction. I'm going to place money on this company that's a specialist company on treating resistant depression.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to put money on this company that is focused on infrastructure and delivery.
And that's going to happen. And it's going to happen soon. Like, I look at MAPS as phase 3 readouts for MDMA. Like, I think this is going to be a turning point for the industry where we start to see more and more influx of dollars and actual proper funding for a lot of these companies. Because right now it's been like, it takes time and it's slow moving and you need to have data to get people involved. But once the data is released and it's compelling, the one encouraging thing I did find after the conference in Denver is that the Wall Street Journal had 3 front page stories on MAPS and MDMA. So that's great for the industry. So as you said, it brings more attention to other trials that are taking place. And when I look at what you guys are doing right now, you just told me phase 3 trials can cost between 50 and $100 million, and you're doing it for one.
Yeah,
That's incredible. It's incredible.
we're doing it for one. And you know the other interesting part about our phase three? There's three additional work streams in the phase three program that's partially majority funded by the UK Department of Health. And they go to address many of the concerns that big pharma have with the psychedelics industry. And that is resulting in big pharma. Big pharma are fully aware of what we're doing as an industry, but only one company has cut a check into this industry. And they're concerned with, back to my point, is how is this actually going to work in the real world? How commercially successful is it going to be to scale drug and therapy together? And what's the IP moat that exists? So we've got three work streams in the phase three. One is about engaging with the NHS commissioners. They're essentially the people that control the checkbook for the UK public healthcare system, which has an annual budget of $280 billion. So we've got an engaged program with them where we're engaging with them to identify their propensity to purchase ketamine-assisted therapy to treat severe alcohol use disorder within the UK public healthcare system. Second work stream with medics, clinicians, to understand their propensity to prescribe ketamine-assisted psychotherapy within the public healthcare system. And then the third work stream is with patients, actual people affected and their propensity to engage with this treatment. And so not only have we got a phase three live that's costing us only $1 million US, but we've actually got a very, very valuable market research program ongoing. And everything we learn in this program, we'll bring that over into the R&D programs that there's a real target for this company, which is the US and FDA approval for our therapeutics to treat mild, moderate, and severe alcohol use disorder in the US. But we'll be bringing in experience from the real world.
Yeah.
And we'll be bringing in experience from late clinical stage and data from late clinical stage and market research from a very large economy and a very large healthcare system to ensure what we develop for the US market has the highest probability of approval and has the highest probability of commercial success if we are successful with approval.
Did you say a budget of $280 billion?
The NHS is the second largest purchaser of healthcare services in the world at $280 billion annual budget. The Brazilian public healthcare system is larger, but the UK is the second largest healthcare budget.
Brazil is the largest. Wow.
Yeah, it was the public healthcare system for the whole country. It's a big country.
So in addition to you, is this the benefit of having Professor David Nutt, like with his relationship involved? Like what's in addition to all the research and data, like what is the value obviously of having him besides like, being smart at what he does and knowing research, but obviously behind the scenes, like walk us through that. We're not part of your everyday life, but for viewers that really understand like what his network is involved with and who he knows, I would assume that having someone like that and the relationships he has with the NHS is very valuable, I would think.
Quite valuable indeed. It's actually a combination of Professor David Nutt, and Professor Celia Morgan. So David is our Chief Research Officer, and Celia is our Head of Ketamine Research. Celia was the PI on our Phase 2B program, and will be the PI on our Phase 3 trial. And we're submitting the clinical trial application to the competent authority in the UK this month. And so Celia is a world authority on the use of ketamine and ketamine-assisted therapy to treat substance and behavioral addictions. And David is a world authority on addiction in general and psychedelics to treat addiction. But to give you an example, Dave, we want to look at this addiction. We want to find out about this. He goes, oh yeah, this is who you need to speak to in NIDA. This is who you need to speak to in NIAAA. This is the person in the EMA. So he's incredibly well networked.
Speeds up the process, right?
Speeds up the process, de-risks, and reduces time.
Yeah.
And that's our business model. De-risk by repurposing already approved drugs, racemic and esketamine, to take them from approved medications to treat pain and as an anesthetic, and repurpose them to treat addiction. And this isn't new. If we look at the leading drug globally to treat alcohol use disorder, it's Vivitrol, owned by Alkermes, generates about $400 million a year revenue, and they repurposed naltrexone from an oral tablet to a monthly subcutaneous injection. And so we're doing the same thing, taking drugs that are already approved, repurposing them to treat a very large, underserved, a very large medical issue with a large unmet need, to reduce time to market and to reduce risk for investors. Same thing for MDMA. MDMA will soon be approved, and we're going to look to repurpose it from an oral tablet approved for PTSD to an oral disintegrating tablet to be delivered sublingually to treat addictions. And again, it's about de-risking it for investors because safety is established, we'll establish efficacy, and reducing time to commercialization.
So your collaboration agreement with the University of Exeter for the upcoming phase 3 trial, when does that get underway?
The phase 3 collaboration agreement is in place. Program has started. Clinical trial application is being finalized and will be submitted in the near term.
Okay.
And we would aim to have reg and ethics this H2 this year and first participant Q4 this year.
This is awesome. We need
so
to
you'd have Awakn in phase 3 for ketamine to treat alcohol use disorder. You'd have Compass in phase 3 for psilocybin to treat treatment-resistant depression. And you'll have potentially MAPS on label with MDMA to treat PTSD.
Good arena to be in. Listen, my mortgage is up due. If you could somehow get that, 50 million down to 1, maybe get my interest rate down a little low, I could use your help. That's amazing.
You've got a house that's worth 50 million. Listen, me and the kids are calling over because we want to move into your house.
I don't have that, buddy. Maybe one day we can only just imagine and wish, right? But listen, we need to have more of these conversations. This has been incredible. But congrats obviously on the work you've been doing. Keep working hard. I know as far as cash position, you've been trying to preserve. That's a lot of the conversation that we have right now, but I feel like we're there, and it's all going to help with a couple of leaders, as you said, with really important data that I think that will rise the entire industry, where now we look at key trials that are taking place, and this is going to be at the forefront. As you said, there's only a select few that are in phase 3. So keep up the great work. Tell the team I say hi, and let's keep the conversation going.
Happy to. Good to speak to you again. Good to speak to your audience again, and looking forward to staying in touch over the weeks and months to come.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks.
What's up, everyone? So what'd you think of the interview? Are there any more questions you want us to ask? Then leave a comment below on information that you want to learn more of. Make sure to share this video with your network and smash that like button. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.